Cause for Hope with Dr. Larry Mitnaul and Pilar Pedraza is brought to you by Kohl's Cares and Ascension Via Christi in partnership with PBS Kansas Public Television.
Take my hand, don't let go. Look in my eyes and in my soul. Hold me close, hold me near. Please let go of all your fear. I'm not going anywhere.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Pilar Pedraza, and with me is my co-host Dr. Larry Mitnaul, who is a child psychiatrist and adolescent psychiatrist with Ascension Via Christi. We're here to continue our discussion about family mental health and wellness. Sadly, too many Sedgwick County teens and adults don't realize they are not alone in their feelings and daily struggles, and that help is available, and their friends and family may not pick up on their nonverbal cues that they need help, or maybe unsure what to do. With the help of a grant from Kohl's Cares, Ascension Via Christi, Wichita State University, and other local partners, we're actively trying to get the community thinking and talking about mental wellness and what we can all do to help ourselves and our children stay mentally fit. And tonight we are talking about mental health and physical health, and the role that your family physician or pediatrician can play in helping your child be the best that they can be.
Yes, and Pilar, I'm so glad that we're highlighting this and talking about this issue, because often our families and young people often think of physicians or the pediatrician for just the physical ailments or the sports physical, once a year. And often that relationship between the physician and the child can be really important so that kids are able to reveal some of the things that are going on with them that aren't just bumps and bruises, but how they're feeling inside.
Why do you think that as a society we tend to have those two things separated in our minds, mental health in one category and physical health in another? Yeah,
I think in one sense, there probably isn't one kind of stock answer, but there are a lot of ways that I think we've gotten to a place sometimes where we separate the two. One is that psychiatry and psychology is a relatively younger field than maybe some of the other medical specialties, and so sometimes when you're the baby brother in the family, you don't always get your due. But also, I think in terms of the way that we framed often the discussion about mental wellness, you think of movies like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I mean, it really makes mental illness kind of seem like this dark, deep thing that you don't share and kind of talk about. And so that's why I'm encouraged by the young people that I see today, that we're starting to bring out more of the theme of mental wellness being really a part of everyday life. And we actually know now that it affects all of our physical health, not just our emotional health.
Yeah, I mean, very much so. We know how much damage stress itself can do to the physical body.
Absolutely.
And that's just one aspect of mental health.
You're absolutely right. And so in terms of, days missed from work and often children's performance in the classroom or virtually, as the case may be, they're really impacted by how their emotions are. And so it can be really tricky sometimes to tease out what of this is a physical ailment, what of this is a child kind of struggling emotionally. So how, as a parent or a pediatrician, do you do that? Yeah, so one of the great things is, or that I encourage parents to do is, we take our kids, struggles seriously. And that means, if they're having the tummy ache and the stomach upset and feeling kind of nauseous, we do what comes, first. So we, look for the basic signs and symptoms that we know of, and then contact, your child's kind of pediatrician and have them seen and evaluated. I think often that discussion can be the starting point for ruling out anything, significant or serious otherwise. And in that relationship, in that meeting, they can talk about, well, is there something else going on too that's contributing to these feelings of illness or feeling unwell?
And how do you set it up so that your child feels comfortable and trusts their pediatrician?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think part of it is we can often set the story for our kids before they have, these experiences. So knowing that they're going to see the physician, knowing that they're going to see their doctor, you can, start to set the stage that, hey, we're going to talk about, that you're not feeling well, and the doctor may ask you a lot of questions, and I want you to tell them everything that's going on with you that you think might be playing a role in how you're feeling now. So it might not just be that that you fell and bumped your head, but also people have been mistreating you at school, or you've been feeling bullied or a little bit stressed about your tests and exams, because all of that will help your doctor get to know you better and find the right solution for you.
And you spoke with a pediatrician about some of this and how to manage that relationship.
I did. I got to speak with the wonderful Dr. Amy Siri, who talked about this really important topic and what she does to help families and young people that see her to feel at ease and able to open up and kind of talk about the things that matter most to them. So we should definitely check that out.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm grateful to be joined today by Dr. Amy Siri, a really fantastic pediatrician for Ascension Via Christi, and I appreciate you taking out the time for us to just kind of chat and talk about this important topic, about families really connecting with their team of care, and how that connection is also helpful for their mental wellness as well as their physical wellness. So, Dr. Siri, thank you. Could you tell us just a little bit about kind of your role with Ascension and many of the many hats that you wear?
Yeah. I'm a board certified pediatrician, and my primary role is a teaching doctor, which means I am part of the faculty for the Ascension Via Christi Family Medicine Residency Program. So for every patient I encounter, there's a resident and likely a med student tagging along as well, and I'm helping make sure they are developing their skills when it comes to taking care of children.
Good.
I see children from newborn age all the way up to young adulthood.
Okay, all right. And so does that have a firm cutoff on the young adulthood side, or are there kind of exceptions depending on where they are? And
there
how
are
they're
the
doing?
occasional exceptions. If we have children with very severe diseases, maybe limited life course,
Yeah.
we try to help that family as far along as possible.
Great.
Nothing worse than getting to a more final moment and then suddenly being switched to a different team.
Sure, yeah. I can imagine that can be a really big shakeup, and certainly care transition can be hard for some kiddos and some families for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you talk about, I guess, the importance of people coming in to be seen, early for the concerns that they're having, and maybe not just, waiting for the once a year kind of checkup?
Right. I mean, a lot of families seem to take a lot of pride in, oh, my child never gets sick. We never go to the doctor. And that's not necessarily a great setup for your child's well-being. We are happy to help when your child does have a more acute need, whether an injury or an illness. And we're always happy to help with, sports physicals. And it may seem like your child's getting a really thorough check during a sports physical, but they're really not getting as much as we would like. We're really focusing on their muscles and joints and how those work during those visits and making sure they're ready to play sports well and healthily.
Yeah.
But really important is the well child check. And that's kind of an annual exam when a child gets older, a little more frequent than when they're kind of in their infancy. And that well child check, that phrase well, is really important because the wellness of a child is more than just the physical abilities of their body. We're
Yes.
wanting to check in to see how they're doing mentally, emotionally, how their behavior development's coming along, how they're engaging socially with the world around them. And if families skip out on these visits or spread them out too far, it's hard for us to really get to know the child, their family, what daily life is like for them, and to really understand the whole encompassing of that person that child might be.
Okay, I like the way that you phrase that, because we really are often, I think, or in my work, I often feel that way. Each visit is a snapshot into their life, and so we're kind of accumulating data the more that we get to see them interact and watch the growth. And so it sounds like what you're saying is, when families maybe wait too long in those intervening periods, that we could be losing out on some really important information that would help us gauge how a child is tracking through development. Is that right?
Exactly. So when they come in for a well child check, some of the initial parts will be working with a nurse who's going to go through, a basic checklist of some things, making sure they can see and hear, seeing how their diet's doing. And we often do have a questionnaire for young children, how they're progressing developmentally. But when they get to the part where the physician's with them in the room, we're checking so many things. We're really, doing that good, thorough head-to-toe exam.
Yeah.
We're asking lots of questions about how things are functioning system by system, including, what the parents' perceptions are of how's their child progressing developmentally, how are they doing with behaviors.
Okay. Yes.
And what's so great is by really getting those snapshots, there's so much help that we can provide. Everyone loves life hacks.
Right.
Pediatricians
You're
are
right.
great at helping parents life hack how to be a parent.
Oh, wow.
When you've got a child who maybe just doesn't really want to engage with bedtime, like how do you make this happen? Because we know that children who don't get good sleep don't perform well the next day at school and can be misdiagnosed with having all kinds of other problems, et cetera. So these questions that we're asking really do have these bigger implications on their child's ability to succeed in life.
Sure, good. I really like that pediatric life hacks. I feel like that should be the new hashtag. So if people are following Dr. Siri, look for that. She said it first. In terms of this season and what you typically see, what are some of those things?
So we have a lot of kids with asthma and allergy issues. So any spring or summertime, a lot of that gets flared up. We're always happy to help. Those are chronic illnesses that do need to be tracked with time.
Okay.
And again, I'll make a plug. Sometimes kids with chronic illnesses who come in for checks specific to that illness forget to come in for those well child checks. So this child
okay.
only gets defined by their chronic illness
I see.
and not again as who they are as an entire person.
I see. Yeah.
It's also the end of the school year. That can also be some anxiety provoking for many of the children we take care of. There's also a little bit of depression sometimes. Some kids feel really sad to be separated from close friends or from trusted adults, especially if they're maybe not in the safest home environment.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's lots of things that we can pick up on that can be subtle, but I got to see them in person and
Right.
just find it.
Okay, that's right. And in terms of having that alliance with families and with children, I think sometimes there can be the perception of maybe bringing some of my child's vulnerabilities or things that we're questioning might get them labeled. And I guess how do you help families to understand that recognizing a child's struggle isn't necessarily a label that puts them in a box?
I think it is important as a physician, any kind of health provider, that we make sure we don't label them as the asthmatic child. They are a child who happens to have asthma, for example. So how we phrase things can be very important, and that can help families in turn then figure out how are they going to phrase things, how are they going to mentally grasp what's going on. So we can provide a little bit of road mapping to make sure that parents aren't so focused on a diagnosis or so overwhelmed with trying to keep their child physically healthy that they forget about those other aspects.
I see.
So they might be so afraid of their child's asthma that they keep them out of sports, not realizing that by being physically active and building up the strength of their child's lungs, they actually improve the asthma.
I see.
Though at first, when their child's not well conditioned, it may seem like the asthma is acting up and being worse.
Yes, right. And we talked about before the cameras were rolling too about anxiety. And so sometimes the natural inclination can be to avoid when really doing the activity or taking it in steps and pushing against it can actually be part of the recovery plan.
So just like we have these physical diagnoses, when we get into mental or behavioral, emotional kinds of diagnoses, making sure parents understand what part of that may just be normal childhood, what part of that may be an indication that their child is developing a little slower than their peers, and helping them understand early interventions can make a huge difference. That if their child is struggling with relationships to their peers, helping them get into systems where maybe there's adult supervised behavior or activities for peer groups. So Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, 4-H club,
Yes.
YMCA classes and sports clubs, et cetera. Those can be huge in helping their child to engage.
Sure. I love those recommendations too, or just things to think of that are really important. Again, just touch points in a child's life that help them to flourish and thrive. I think that sometimes, especially if families haven't had as much contact with their pediatrician, it can feel like a scary thing. And so I imagine that there are some kids who present to you, and with the residents that you're working with, maybe kind of closed down and quiet and afraid to connect. So how do you help families to kind of get past that so that, you get the information that you need and they're getting the help that they are seeking?
And again, that minor plug of if they come see me all those times before, hopefully that child's already had a little bit of a relationship or a framework in their mind of how these kinds of visits go. So the medical equipment or exams don't seem as scary or as intimidating, especially if they're hurting and in pain. Especially even emotionally, if they know I'm someone who can be trusted, that I'm not going to laugh or make fun of them, that I'm going to help them understand lots of kids are feeling the same way that they are. If I haven't had that chance to establish that relationship, it's much harder. It takes longer for me to kind of slowly help that child feel that they are in a safe space, that I'm someone that they can talk to and that they can trust implicitly, that I always have their best interests at mind. And that might mean I need a couple of visits to really get at what's going on. Yeah. And that can sometimes delay a little bit of care or leave that child in a more vulnerable time until we can really get down to what the root is.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And I think you've already spoken to, just how helpful it can be through these series of appointments to catch things. It gives you a better chance probably of catching things that are at an earlier stage, because sometimes that can be a barrier too. If things feel really severe or kids are feeling really behind or families are feeling behind, that can be a barrier as well. Is that part of the push to make sure that people are getting in and being seen as often as they should?
There's a lot of times when we finally do kind of pick up on maybe what's happening, that often parents are like, I've kind of suspected this for a while, and I was scared to come in because I just didn't want to know for certain.
Wow.
And I understand that fear. And again, as a parent, it's really heart-wrenching to know that maybe your child isn't where you were hoping that they would be for that point of life. But I would say those kinds of delays only just exacerbate the problem later on. If you ever have a question or concern, giving us a call, coming in for that special appointment, not necessarily waiting till the annual visit. We are here. We're happy to see their child, their family. If we just need to have a little bit of a one-on-one conversation with the parent, we're happy to have those kinds of visits as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, Dr. Siri, we've been in a really unique time. Many would say kind of unprecedented, in which kids have maybe spent less time together in community, less time in those academic centers of learning, and maybe doing some of the extracurricular activities that they've come to love. And so, have you noticed that change, and that change affecting kids and their health and how they're doing these days?
Absolutely, we've noticed a big difference. One, in general, we have some families that have been very avoidant of coming into medical systems out of fear. So we have kids that are missing their check-ins, they're missing vaccinations, et cetera. So not great for long-term health. But I see more kids coming in for more acute visits. And interestingly enough, maybe about half of the time they'll tell us in advance, my child's really anxious or feeling kind of depressed or just feeling generally scared. Can we come in and talk about it? The other half of the time we have families coming in and they'll give a different reason for coming in, like chronic headaches or abdominal pain or my toes kind of hurting. And we get in the door and they're like, okay, so I know that's what I told the nurse, but here's why we're really here. So they're even still struggling to want to put it into words and put it out there into the world and to the public people of we're struggling. And I really want everyone to know, this is universal. We are all feeling the impacts of this.
Right.
And many times kids don't necessarily present with obvious signs of, I am feeling sad. It may be more, I don't really want to go do the things I normally do. I don't really want to play. I just kind of want to sit in my room all the time. I don't really like being out in crowds anymore. I'm feeling very spooked, when there's a lot of people around. Or maybe they're having more symptoms in their body, more the stomach aches and the headaches that we're not finding other causes for.
Yes. And I like how you put that sometimes the child will let us know that they're struggling, but it may not be in the language that is explicit or really clear to let us know. And so it sounds like it'd be great that part of what I'm hearing you say too is for parents maybe to also be sensitive to those cues if their child is having an increase in the number of kind of headaches and tummy aches and or are having some of these other complaints that it would be important for them to be seen, because it also may help us to really categorize and define what's underneath and what they're really struggling with.
And I do want to stress for families that when kids have certain types of symptoms of stress, sometimes they want to brush that off. And I say, no, this pain that they're feeling is real. If someone comes to me and they say they have a headache, I can run every test, every bit of blood work, every picture imaging possible, and I won't necessarily see anything, but I don't doubt someone's headache. So when they have these other kinds of pains and discomfort symptoms, they are real, even if the cause isn't what we traditionally think of in medicine and might be more in that mental health realm, because everything is connected and we can't keep compartmentalizing them that way.
You're right. And so that's a really beautiful kind of holistic view of what the human experience is, and how all the things that we struggle with aren't necessarily things that you can see, feel, touch in the same way as other kind of physical ailments or maladies. So good. Well, I really appreciate your time. I know it's really valuable, especially, again, giving both the administrative and teaching roles that you assume. Is there any kind of last words that you'd have for, families or kids in terms of, connecting with their pediatrician and being sure that they're getting the help that they need?
Every kid is unique. The future artists don't necessarily need to be great at math. Let every child develop and flourish in their own special way. We're here to make sure that later on in life they're going to be super successful. So I would say find the doctor that seems to bring out the best in your child, that you really feel that comfort with.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that really great, helpful advice too for what to look for in our kids that might represent the struggles that they're feeling on the inside that are coming out in these other ways. So thank you, Dr. Siri.
My pleasure.
Now, I'm a parent myself, and mine are past the age of well visits, but the advice to make that non-agenda visit is something I'd never heard before.
Yes, I think it's really beautiful the way that she describes it, and part of it is we want children to have really great relationships with adults who can help them kind of navigate the trials and tribulations of life. And so the more adults that they have filling that space, the more opportunities there are for them to share what's really going on inside. It almost reminds me of the movie, the Disney movie Inside Out, where it's, the girl Riley, and you get to see kind of her emotions land. One of the great visuals from that movie that I enjoyed is that, here's Riley kind of in the center, and then these islands of support that help her to feel good. So there's like Family Island and School Island and kind of a play island. And so I think, there's an opportunity here in building a strong attachment and connection to your child's primary care physician, because often they're actually on the front lines too of caring for the mental wellness of our kids and identifying those things. So building that relationship is really important.
But sometimes that relationship doesn't happen. I know with my son, there was one pediatrician we took him to. We walked out and he was like, "Mommy, I don't want to see him again."
Yes.
And in that case, what do you do?
Yes, I think that goodness of fit is important, and finding the right person who your child kind of opens up to. And what's great is that I think we live in such a great community, and often pediatricians, family physicians are really good at kind of recognizing that, as well. All right, if there's someone else who's a better fit for your child and that you think they might be more open to, it's actually worth it. It's worth it for the relationship, because we don't want our children suffering in silence. That can be the biggest, kind of mark against their health. And so having that relationship strong with someone that they feel comfortable talking to is really important.
And it does all come back to that old saying, it takes a village to raise a child.
It sure does.
The pediatrician, the family physician, just one person in that team that your child needs.
That's right. And their ability to kind of share and really relate the things of life to them can be really important. I was on a panel with other physicians who are in kind of primary care, and so we were all talking about how in our notes, there are often little things that actually have nothing to do with, the lung exam or the abdominal exam, that are just like, he got a gold star today, or they've made Citizen of the Week, or whatever that is. And so all of those notes actually that we do often in medicine we're trying to capture the full child and to understand their world. The better we're able to do that, the better we're able to serve kids and help them connect with the services and supports that they need.
And it is really important that you have them as one of your people, but also mentorships make a big difference as well when we're talking about mental health and building those relationships.
They really do, and I think that's one of the things that's been highlighted in this last year, where we've had maybe an absence of as much, adult-child interaction. That's one of the things that kids missed. It wasn't just, their connection to peers and the fun things that they do together, but also the formative relationships that you get from that great coach who gives you a "well done," that was really great job, when you beat beat the school record, or I saw that you worked really hard at that, or the art teacher kind of acknowledging the effort that a young child kind of puts into their work. And so these things are actually really helpful for attachment and helping our children to grow. I think when their base is secure, it makes them freer to kind of explore the world. And so I think their primary care plays a really important role in being one of those models, one of those pillars for our children.
And we talked about having a circle of support for your child,
Yes.
but parents also need that. And some parents feel like they have to do it all on their own, but there are a lot of community resources out there to help them.
There really are. And so I think often parents can do themselves a service too in both modeling by going to talk to their primary care about the things that are going on with them emotionally, but also maybe talking to their kids, not about everything going on in their personal lives, but sharing that, hey, mommy's been feeling a little bit stressed, or dad's been feeling a little bit under the weather, and my doctor was really helpful at helping me find somebody to talk to help me walk through this next phase. And so I think when we can model that, a little bit of that vulnerability for our kids, they see that there doesn't have to be a stigma associated with getting the help that you need and talking about the things that really matter to you.
Yeah, and that's why we're sitting here right now talking about those things that matter. Once again, we are out of time, as we always seem to run out. We hope you will join us for next month's show as we continue our dialogue about family mental wellness. Also, if you've not yet taken advantage of the free Suspenders for Hope Suicide Awareness and Prevention Training Program, we hope you'll do so. Simply go to the website on your screen for more information. And if you haven't seen the previous episodes in this series, go check out kpts.org and see what we had to say. And we'll be back next month with even more.
Take my hand, don't let go. Look in my eyes and in my soul. Hold me close, hold me near. Please let go of all your fear. I'm not going anywhere.
This program was made possible by Kohl's Cares Cause Merchandise Program, supporting the health of families nationwide, including local hospital partnerships like this one with Ascension Via Christi. More information at kohls.com/cares.